All right, good afternoon and welcome to the Half Hour with Premier Power. I'm your host, Michael Holt, owner-operator of Premier Power, Inc., an electrical contractor here in Lake County. We have a couple guests today, and we're going to be talking about electrical safety as it relates to utility power lines. We have Ron Myers with Seco Power Energy Company. Ron, welcome aboard, and thank you for coming.
Good afternoon.
We have my father also, which is another electrical expert in the industry. Dad, thank you for joining us.
Again, thanks for being here, son.
We have Melanie Michelson. She's got the name Michaels in her name, so we like you already. So, Melanie, welcome aboard.
All right, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about electrical safety as it relates to utility power lines because our power is directly related to that. Dad, you have some things you want to bring
Well,
up?
I'm going to go ahead and kind of lead it, and I appreciate that introduction, son. Melanie, you're the one that's going to start the program here, and you know, one of the problems that people have when they lose power, and we'll talk about how do you lose power and what happens later on, but, you know, a storm comes in, hurricane, whatever it is, we don't have power and we're frustrated and we want power as soon as possible. What's the policy? How's the process work?
Well, it's really easy to become frustrated with the whole process, understanding that we only have so many employees for approximately 17,000 or 174,000 members, and we try our best to field those calls. However, the restoration process really begins with the substations, the transmission lines into the substations.
Now, 1 second. So people, the transmission lines, how would I know what the transmission? These are the big wires you see sometimes you're driving down highways and turnpikes and like that. This is the big, tall poles?
Yes, sir. These are coming directly from the distribution plants, the power plants,
Okay.
to our substations, then to be distributed throughout the communities.
Can I ask you a question as we go along? Is it very often that the large power lines have a problem because of hurricanes and storms, or is that a smaller likelihood?
That is a very small likelihood.
Okay.
Very small.
Then we get to the substations, and you'll drive around, you'll see these fences around that, and you see these transformers and these wires coming up. How often the problem is actually created of a storm in the substation?
Well, as we know, it's the lightning capital of the world. That can wreak havoc on anything. And even though our substations are grounded, there are so many number of things that can happen within the substations. But usually we see most of the damage between the substation and your home, which we would call then the feeder lines and the taps.
Okay,
Now,
so the feeder, go ahead, son.
real quick, you brought up lightning and storms with your power. What does lightning affect, and how does that have a problem with your guys' power? What does that cause?
Well, most of our power is protected by a series of ground, of course, and fuses. And when you talk about the amount of electricity produced by a bolt of lightning,
Blows a fuse.
See, what
If it-
happens
yeah.
is the lightning actually can strike the substation, and then it just blows up transformers.
Well, isn't a substation a big giant magnet, right? I mean,
No, it's a bunch of different transformers.
okay.
You know, so you have equipment, and you got equipment outside. You got a lightning bolt that hits in the middle of the substation. It's toast. So now we got the feeder lines, and those are like 14,400 volts.
yes, and then the transformers that we have in our residential areas step that down
Okay.
to the 240 and the
question,
120.
And those could be either on the floor, the little pad mount transformers, or up on the pole, the little hubs up there, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, question on those feeder lines, which is 14,400. How often that's the problem because of storms? I'm trying to get a feel
good
as to
question,
where
good
the
question.
issues are.
Actually, I know you're going to cover the subject later, but trees are actually the largest contributor to power outages during storms.
And for our listeners, on our next segment here in about a couple of minutes, about 15, 20 minutes, we have a licensed arborist here in the room going to come on the line with us and talk more about the maintenance with that. So be aware of that.
All right, well, question I have then on those feeders, what percentage is the feeders? Okay, we know that the high distribution lines, not high. The substations, not that much. Lightning, okay. Now we have the feeders. Is that a big part of power going down, or is it the secondaries that you have the transformers to the house?
It's actually going to be a little bit of the both. It just depends on what type of storm we're talking about.
Okay.
I don't have any exact
Gotcha.
percentages. However, lightning can be just as much of a contributing factor as if a Category 2 or 3 storm comes
Right,
through
Ron,
with high
yeah,
winds.
jump in anytime you want to.
Yeah, you were talking about substations and the amount of outages caused by substation
Right.
damage or trees to power lines. If you wanted some example that some of your listeners might have remembered, back in the, I believe it was the late 80s, early 90s, the Mount Dora substation that Seco owns and operates out on 44, they used to have a chicken farm out there an egg farm, and it was all corrugated metal. and when the hurricane went through, it blew that most of that building into the substation and took that whole substation out.
Shorted it out.
For probably about 5 complete days. Now, we have mobile substations, and we can bring them in and bring power up, but most of the time you can fix things relatively quick. So you are right in that most of our damage will be suffered on the distribution side. You can have,
Gotcha.
according to the topography or the the things that are around.
A 5-day, lapse of no power is, huge. What is the average power loss for a storm or anything like that?
Well,
I mean, is there like 2 days, 24 hours? Is there any kind of little?
there's really no rule of thumb. I mean, I think it took in the storms we had in 2004. I mean, we had outages, people without power for a week, 2 weeks.
Well, in Miami, when Hurricane Andrew hit,
yeah.
that was like months.
But they also had widespread substation damage.
Well, the whole
transmission
distribution
damage.
came. I don't want to get off the topic here because we got to get moving.
That's fine.
Yes, sir.
Do we want to talk about generators? And
Well,
how to-
we got to get moving on this topic.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, go
I know
ahead.
we got feeders. We got then transformers that's on the ground or on the pole that goes to my house. Okay. So now I understand the system. So now that we understand how the system works, can you tell me how you restore your power when there's a major storm? What's the process?
For individuals, it's really important to know that it's really easy to look out at our transformer and see the fuses down and try to flag down a power company and tell them, please just come fix the fuse. But putting it in really easy and relative terms, if I blow a breaker in my house, I can fix the light switch and turn it on all day long. But until I replace and fix the breaker, I'm still not going to have power. That directly relates to what we're talking about is fixing the power from the substation to your home.
So what you do is you go to the substation, you disconnect power to the feeder, which disconnects power to the transformers, which disconnects powers to the secondaries, which goes to the house, and you're working on getting power to the substation first to make sure that's working. Once you get that safe, right, then you make sure your substations are safe and operational. Then you start turning on all the feeders at one time. You start turning on one feeder at a time and start checking how's that work?
We typically will, when a storm comes in, everybody's, vacations canceled, everybody's on hot standby. As soon as the storm is passed, everybody will report to their district offices, and within 30 minutes, the trucks will already be preloaded with as much supplies as we have. We will put remote warehouses throughout the different counties that we serve with materials more local, and those people will go out immediately.
But I'm saying the process
the
is...
line trucks will hit the substation areas.
Gotcha.
Somebody, one or two people will already be there, and once they start working one spot, you'll have crews of 2 fanning out in all directions. A substation will have anywhere from 3 to 8 feeders.
So should the customers be calling and say, hey, I
Hold
don't
on.
have any electric power?
For our listeners, based on my experience, because I work with utility companies pretty regularly, you guys are actually pretty quick. I'd never really worked too much with Seco, but the other guys, you guys are all on the average very fast. There's a problem. You guys are there within like 45 minutes. I'm very surprised. So kudos to you guys for coming out there that quickly. Absolutely.
Now, if we lose power in a major area, should I, as a customer, be calling you guys?
You should call as soon
Really?
as you should call as soon as you lose power. The important thing is that your account is usually identified by your phone number. When your phone number hits our outage management system, we will know you're out of power immediately. Now the continual calls after the initial report are somewhat redundant and really time wasting.
Okay. Now, and there's an emergency operations center phone number, an EOCC, right? For Melanie, you know about
The
that?
EEOC, I don't have their number on me, but it's a government and it's a statewide, so it would be really easy to look it up on the internet.
Okay. All right.
All right, listen, let me just mention to our listeners here, you can call my 790 AM and ask the questions of the utility guys we have here. The number is 352-787-9523. So just kind of make a note of that if you have a question for Seco. We really appreciate them being here. Okay, Mel, is there anything else on the restoration, getting this thing kind of moving, and what happens after that? Okay, then you get the lines down, and then what's the process after that?
Well, as you work down the lines, once the main lines are up on the major roads, then as like Melanie was talking about, we'll go back in and refuse all the individual transformers.
Okay.
And then if that still doesn't have you up, then we're going to look past that. We're going to look at the secondary wires coming into your house.
But the tree might have gone down and taken your secondary wires. Those are the
You
overhead
might have
conductors.
taken your meter pole to the ground.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think there's a priority, right? Like turning back power on. I'm sure we have if a certain line has 500 houses opposed to 10 houses, is there a priority?
Yes, sir. We're going to get on the most people with the most talent. If I've got a 5-man crew, and I've got the choice of on the north side of the road putting on 500 people by spending an hour and a half, or putting on 10 people by spending an hour and a half, I'm going to put the 500 people on first.
Okay. So people just need to be patient. That you guys really do care, obviously.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And you want to get it to them as quick as possible. Melanie, we only have about a minute left. Is there anything you wanted to close up on this part here?
For all of our members, just know that you can go to our website where we have extensive information on storm outages, the restoration process that we just spoke about at www.secoenergy.com, all lowercase.
Okay, so therefore they can go there, and then there's a lot of information there. All right.
Yeah, there's a storm tab. You can look at a map. It'll show outages. It'll give you numbers of people out per county, and restoration times, all kinds of information, useful information.
Now, will you be able to see, do you have like a radar there to show storms also, or is it just basic information?
No, the basic information you're going to get there is how to report an outage. It'll give you estimated time of your specific restoration.
Oh, really?
And it's just a really convenient way for you to be able to report an outage.
All right. Now, what was that energy, Michael, you brought up earlier? That was the emergency, what was that department
The
called?
EOCE, and it's an emergency hotline, right, for storm preparation? Or?
Well, the EEOC, basically they coordinate all first responders in a disaster. Several of us from SECO work in those EEOC centers.
Every county has an EOC, and you'll be able to go to the county website and get any information, lakecounty.com, marioncounty.com, whatever's appropriate.
We're going to take a break. We'll be back in a couple minutes.
Thank you so much.
All right, back to the show. Dad, you want to bring up some topics?
All right. We're now going to talk about, I think you mentioned, at least in the break time, Ryan, that 90% of the power failures is primarily caused by trees.
Yes, sir. During storms and such of that nature, the tree limbs get wet. Trees are old. Any number of things can happen, but primarily it's trees being uprooted from the ground, or the limbs themselves getting into our power lines and causing either fuses to drop out of breakers, or actual damage to the line where the line's tore off the pole, or actually the line is actually snapped if the weight's heavy enough.
Now, thank you for that, Ron. We got started without introducing Brian.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
yeah.
okay. Brian is with Standard Tree Services. He's a licensed arborist, an ISA licensed arborist. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Brian, actually, his son is my nephew, little Carson, and so he's a very close friend of mine and family member of mine. So we're glad we're glad to have you on board here. Now, trees, storms, power lines, I mean, they're directly related, so we're glad to have you here. You guys want to bring up anything here?
Yeah, what I want to do is, so what does SECO do about trees and the power lines? Do you guys have a program for that to try to keep it?
Yes, sir. We have a tree department that all they do is tree maintenance on our power lines. They do it all year round. We do a 3-year cycle. So if I start cutting trees at pole A in Lake County, then in 3 years I should be back at pole A in Lake County. And we will maintain a 15 feet around both sides of the line, clear zone of our power lines. On new construction, we cut them ground to sky. On stuff that's already growing, that's where our licensed arborists basically make decisions on cutting trees. Like a lot of people say, well, just top it. Well, you don't want to just top a tree because you're back there cutting the same thing next year. Proper pruning of trees will allow for a 3 to 5 year maintenance cycle that allows us the time to do it proper, and also allows a better survivability of the tree. We don't have a hate relationship with trees. We love trees.
So you're not
just as much as the
you're
next.
not going to go out there and get a guy that doesn't know what he's doing and just cut trees down or trim branches out of the way, and then all of a sudden it defaces
No, sir,
the
absolutely
tree.
not. There's actually a lot of training that goes into it.
I'm sure I have a tree on my property. It's got a power line going through it, and it's almost from, you made a comment, from top to sky or something? Almost gone completely. Well, the tree on my property is almost gone. I think, Brian, you've seen it before. There's nothing there. The whole inside is beveled out for the power line.
Because you got an oak tree
Right.
under
It's right through it.
a feeder line.
People have all kinds of emotional attachments with trees. I mean, they add a lot of value to the property, aesthetic purposes, and I can see where people are a little hesitant to do tree pruning because of that purpose. Brian, do you have any insight on that you want to bring in?
Yeah, sure do. Just because a tree is green and pretty doesn't always mean it's safe. So get a professional out there, an ISA certified arborist. He'll do an evaluation on your trees. He'll find defects that most people wouldn't. You mentioned topping earlier. You top a tree.
Wait, 1 second. What does that mean? Let's talk to us.
Topping is cutting a branch to a stub. You see it often. People just cut them, shorten them down to a stub.
Right.
Well, what happens is the tree grows back 3 times as fast. All that new growth is weakly attached and becomes a liability. So you really want to make sure you prune the tree right the first time.
People jeopardize, good looks for safety or decoration for safety.
I think a lot of people don't know anything. I mean, it's a tree.
I wouldn't know.
I mean, it's a tree. I'm not worried about a tree. I mean, a tree's a tree.
And no offense, Brian, not to, down that, but I mean, yeah, I don't know much about it, and I would consult a tree guy. I mean, if I have a problem, if I have a problem with my foot, I go to the foot doctor. If I have a problem with my tree, I go to a licensed tree guy.
Yeah, but I don't know I have a problem, so I'm not going to call an arborist. I'm not going to call a tree guy.
But that's the key. You don't have a problem until you have it, and then once you have a problem, and with power outage, your fridge is going to spoil. I mean, you're going to have some serious issues. So you definitely want to get with somebody in advance, or at least reach out to somebody you have that contact on file. That when that problem comes up, you're right there, ready to go.
Well, Brian, how long ago was it that you actually took care of a tree on my property, where the tree had fallen on you guys call it the secondary wire, which is the wire that goes to my house. It took Michael? It took the weatherhead out. What did it do?
The one in you have a property in Groveland and the power line. The secondary, when you say secondary, that's coming from your power pole, the drip loop going to your service, your big riser penetrating on your roof.
Right to the house.
It bent it right off, so we had to pull the whole thing off and just replace the riser. It wasn't a big remediation, but it was obviously a big scope of work, and there was no power there for 5-6 hours.
Well, I mean, just for an example,
it's dangerous.
During
the
storms of 2004, many of the individual outages that, the power companies had power on the main lines, had power available, but one of the big things were that the weather heads were taken out, the meter poles were taken out, and you have to get electricians to fix that. That has to be.
I had to call an electrician. I had Michael to come out there to change that. I had to get an arborist out there to get the trees taken care of.
Well, what's the most horrible thing you can imagine is all your neighbors have power. You don't have power because your meter pole's sitting on the ground. Utility company doesn't handle that. But if you looked ahead, you planned ahead and saw.
But I thought you guys maintain all the trees around the power lines.
We don't maintain the tree lines on the secondary wires unless it's already pulling on the line. So what we would do if you had called in advance and said we want to get these trees taken care of by Brian before, because this is storm season coming up, what you would do is you would call SECO. And SECO would come out and work with the arborist. Take your secondary line. We call it an outage for repair. Take your secondary line on, roll it up, let Brian do his work, and then you call. Within an hour, we're going to be out there rehanging that line. Most of the time, we'll hang it just as soon as he's done.
I want to just make a quick note and take the opportunity to, if you guys ever, for our listeners, if you ever want to take that time and maybe do it right now, take down Brian Standage's information. His company is StandagedTreeServicesinc.com. And his phone number is 352-636-3527. So in advance, storm season's coming up. Get Brian's information, store it. That way, if it comes up, you're ready to go. And you're a hero.
Brian, you have a website?
Sure. It's www.standagedtreeservice.com.
Okay, so Brian, if somebody is saying, listen, I'm hearing you, I got trees, I don't know if it's safe or not. Do you do a service where you can come out and do an evaluation to at least help the person understand what they should or shouldn't do?
Yeah, we can evaluate the tree based on the species of tree. Each tree has different growth habits. Some are stronger than others. And maybe it's a tree you really like. We may be able to do some thinning and some pruning, and the storms come through and you still have your tree. We can save your trees.
You guys are here to make it safe and look good.
Right. We do an honest assessment on what the problem is, not just we don't just want to cut your trees.
Cool. I like it.
Yeah, Ryan, you were mentioning that you guys have ISA certified arborists that you use. Do you have them on staff?
Yes, sir. We have, that I know of, we have 3 ISA certified arborists on staff, and they run our whole program.
Brian, what is an ISA? What does that stand for?
It's the International Society of Arboriculture.
So if you were going to get a person to come out to your house, you're encouraging the person to make sure this person is ISA certified.
Correct.
And how could I find out if this person that I'm calling or I'm looking in the newspaper, do ISA certified people typically identify themselves as ISA certified in their advertising and marketing?
Yes, they should, and they should be able to provide a certification number. And If you want to check them out, you can go to the ISA website.
Is that ISA.com?
No, it's the International Society of Arboriculture.
Well, go ahead, Brian. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. It's you can go to treesaregood.com and or the ISA website, punch in their number, and they'll tell you if they're an arborist.
So you can go online, find a lot of information about that. I love the internet. You can also see it. I mean, you have your shirt. You have ISA logos on your shirt. You have it on your trucks, I believe, right? So you have it right there. It's all about,
Is there
your
any-
appearance.
Okay. Do I really need a certified arborist, a company why can't I just call a guy who's working out of his pickup truck? A lot of guys have lost work. They get a pickup truck, they get a chainsaw. I mean, what's the big deal here?
Well, a qualified arborist he's going to understand how your tree grows. He understands the growth patterns, how it grows, how the tree grows. Another big thing, generally, if you have an arborist on your property, he's going to have the right insurance, the workers' comp, and he's just qualified to handle anything tree related.
Okay, that'd be great.
You, as a person, when you're hiring a service provider, whether it be a tree or electrician or a plumber, do you go through that process?
I would have just called the guy and I did before, call the guy just that did trees. I didn't know anything.
You don't think about it at all?
Well, I didn't know. I didn't know that I had a problem. And that, since obviously Brian's part of our family, Brian's been with now for like 10 years. And, we got lots of different properties, and he comes out, and just the other day, you were just a month ago, he was at our property.
And you're a pretty aware kind of a guy, so I'm wondering if a bunch of listeners wouldn't think about.
Well, you don't know that it's a tree. You get a chainsaw and just cut a tree, but there's ways.
There's weight involved. There's growth patterns, like you said. I mean, there's a lot of dynamics and safety involved that you definitely want to go ahead. Ron, you want to?
Well, I mean, my understanding with trees is there's a lot of different things that can happen. I mean, you can have bug problems that could destroy a tree. Wood destroying organisms, all kinds of things. So, only an arborist is going to be able to make that evaluation and determination. Sometimes I know that we come into trees that we would like to save, but because of bugs or because of internal damage or other biological factors, it's just more practical to take the tree.
And that's something, Brian, you could look at and say, listen, this tree is not going to be. I know you've done it to our property. Say, Dad, this tree is going to have to come down because it might not be today, but we don't know when that tree is going to go down.
Future.
So it's a matter of, you're looking at the big picture, not. Now, when you go on a property, do you check all the other property trees just to kind of make sure that, even if it's not the issue related to utility?
Yeah, I make a visual, and I have a tree evaluation form I actually fill out.
Oh,
and,
wow.
At the end of the form, you note everything that's wrong with the tree, and we have a system that tells us, does the tree need to come down, or can we prune it and make it safe?
Well, the whole purpose of this program here is electrical safety, and of course it ties in with making sure the trees are not taking your power down. And I guess what we're encouraging here is you don't want to wait until there's a storm. You want to make sure you call a certified arborist, get them out there. Now, do you charge for a person for just to go out there and take a look at it and give them an idea of what's going on? Or is that
you want your trees, just inspected, have us out, and we'd be glad to take a look at them.
Okay, so more than likely you can call a certified arborist to come out, take a look at it, give you the information, and it'd be a good idea now to take care of that problem because once it's there, it's there.
Well, there's a tune to close, so I want to thank Ryan Myers, Melanie Michelson, Brian Stanton with Tree Services and Seco, and Dad, you for coming out to the show, and everybody have a safe week.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.